So, is Rosalind supposed to be the Voldemort of the fairy world? Okay, so I am back with another recap of Fate, the Winx Saga, episodes 3 and 4. Okay, so this episode opens where last episode left off, where Bloom's eyes are glazed over. Of course, Aisha is still there concerned. And then we get a flash of what Bloom is actually seeing. It's a vision of a woman. It seems like the day that she was born. And in the vision, the woman is saying, come find me. So now Bloom is on the hunt to try to find out who this woman is. Aisha is basically saying, it was a vision, it was turning out to a dream. So let's keep our expectations in check. So we flash to Rev and Sky. They're sparring. Silver makes an appearance, and you can clearly see that he is on borrowed time. Rev is, trying to reassure Sky that, they're doing everything that they can. And, everybody obviously knows how Sky feels about Silver. He sees him as a second father. And, it's at this point he's just worried. But leave it to old Stella. She's, but she reassured him that, Silver will be okay. But then she went into this party that they're supposed to be having that night. And you can clearly see that Sky is not really all that interested in going to a party. Okay. So the students are now in class. Dowling is still, trying to teach them focus and control. And she went through a couple of the students' Tara, used her powers. And of course she was over enthusiastic. And basically, Dowling was like, was telling her, explaining her powers to her about how she has the ability to give life, but sometimes she do a little too much. Surprisingly, Bloom did okay, this time. She had like a couple of pieces of wood in front of her, and Dowling told her to focus on one piece, one piece, and she was, successful. And Beatrice was, working on something. I wasn't really clear what she was doing, but Dowling was, happy with whatever progress Beatrice was making. And Aisha, who was sitting next to Bloom, she's able to use her powers, but she wanted her to focus on like a drop of water. And you can clearly see that Aisha's focus is off, and it's bothering her. It's throwing her off a little bit. Okay, so we get an update on Silver's condition. He's in the greenhouse, and Ben is doing the best he can to treat him, or at least keep him comfortable. But, he's not doing well. And, we do find out that in order for Silver to make a full recovery, they would actually have to find the burned one that scratched him and kill it. So Dane and Tara are in the lunchroom, and they're talking, and he had mentioned the party. There's a party that the specialists throw every year, and Tara was surprised that he was going, and he asked her if she was going, and she was trying to play it cool, like I might make an appearance, right? So Bloom and Musa are at the table, and, they're talking about Aisha. They were concerned because, she did she looked shaken after I don't want to say she failed at the assignment, but you can clearly see that there's something going on with her. So they were talking about that briefly. And then Musa, obviously, Sam appeared. Musa got distracted. Bloom kind of teased her a little bit. And just before Tara came to the table, she, asked Bloom not to say anything. So Tara sat down. Of course, she started talking about the party and was talking about how she could be cool, and how, why isn't, smart students considered cool. And then she made a reference to Beatrice and, how she doesn't look like that. And, you get, again, back to her insecurities about how she looked. Eventually, Musa got up. During Tara's, her little tirade, I won't say tirade, but during her talking, and she's like, oh, I have to go. Musa, it kind of strikes me. She comes across as extremely rude for some reason to Tara. I don't know. It's just her interactions with Tara is just off-putting. I get that Tara talks a lot, but I do think that Musa at times is insensitive, really. And it seems like it's only directed at Tara for some reason. Okay, so Sky ends up going to the greenhouse to check on Silva, and he wanted an update. And of course, Silva, really don't want to talk about it because he does love Sky like a son, and he really doesn't want him to worry about it. He did tell him that the infection was spreading, but he also told him that the military is actually, they're out now trying to find the burn one to kill it. So he's trying to reassure him that, they're doing everything that they can, but he just doesn't really want him to worry. But that's easier said than done. So Bloom and Aisha are back in their room. Aisha is still working on trying to isolate this one droplet of water. Bloom is going through the yearbooks. During the previous conversation she had with Tara, she was asking her if her dad had any old yearbooks. So she was able to get the yearbook. She's going through the yearbooks, and of course she's not able to find this particular person. Next thing you know, Tara cries out about a winged liner. They end up going in to help her you get her liner together, and of course she's like, well, why aren't you getting ready for the party? And initially they weren't going to go, but she was like, no, we need to go. We need to make an appearance. We need to at least come across as if we're cool. She really wants to go to this party because she really has a thing for Dane. So they all decide they're gonna get together and go to the party. So we flash to Stella. For some odd reason, she's in Sky's room and she's talking about, there's 4 other students trying to get dressed, and they're just a nightmare. And Red was like, it's amazing how everyone is a nightmare. He was like, you ever think that if everyone around you is a nightmare, that it might be you? He does not like Stella at all. So Silva is now in Dowling's office. They have a map of the territory, and they're actually talking to Marco and his team. And Marco is basically saying, they're still tracking the monster. They feel like it should be wrapped up by morning. By the looks of Silva, Dowling is like, I don't think that we have until morning. And so Marco ended up, getting off the phone. He wants to focus on the task at hand. Dowling starts talking about how, she's scared because they're still students, and she feel like they should be out there, and they're basically telling her that they've done all they can do. They've, trained them to the best of their ability, and now, they have to leave them to do what needs to be done. So they arrive at the party. They kind of break off. Aisha and Bloom went one way. Musa and Tara went to the bar, what looks like the bar. And Tara made brownies. She had made wheat brownies, right? So Sam walked up, and they're pretending, Musa and Sam are pretending like they don't know each other. So they did the whole, he's like trying to fake like he's trying to remember her name, and they shake hands, and that whole thing. Dane eventually walked up, and he, they talked a little bit, and he, ate some of the brownies and said he would take some to Rev and the other guys. So Sky and Bloom are now talking, and of course he's talking about his relationship with Silva and how Silva raised him after his father died, and then he asked her about her parents, and she really didn't have a whole lot to say, and he was understanding. He didn't want to press the issue, and then they decide, what, let's play beer pong. And so Aisha and Bloom was one team, Sky and Reb was the other team. Aisha and Bloom were cheating, right? So Sky and Reb were getting drunk, and eventually Aisha was what she was trying to do was make the water bubble so that when he threw the ball in there, it would pop out. But what she did was she exploded. Basically, there was an explosion, and all the cups and all the beer kind of fell over, and it got all over Rev. And Rev was like, what the hell? And of course, she was embarrassed, and she felt, some kind of way. Like, again, you can still see that something is bothering her, and she excused herself. Okay, so shortly after Aisha left, Rev, you can clearly see that Rev likes Bloom a lot more than he likes Stella. He even brought up her old roommate, Ricky, and of course, Bloom is like, well, who's Ricky? Sky really didn't want to talk about it, but Rev ends up going into how, Ricky and Stella were, BFFs until she thought that Ricky was trying to get Sky, and the next thing you know, she ended up blind. So at this point, it's around the school that Stella blinded Ricky. So people are, that's why, a lot of people kind of stand offish with her because people don't really care too much for her. So eventually Sky and Bloom saw Stella standing not too far away, and Bloom decided, let me go and look for Aisha. So as she was looking for Aisha, she went into, another room, and she saw all of these photos that were in boxes. And so she's looking through all of these photos, and she, found a photo, and we assume that at this point she has found a photo of the woman that she saw in her vision. So Musa and Sam, they're off to themselves. They're talking. Musa ends up asking him about his relationship with Tara, and asking them if they were close. And he basically told her that, for a long time it was just them. So all they had was each other. So, they are close. And he asked her, so is that why we're sneaking around? And she says, Tara, feels a lot. And she, she likes to ask a lot of questions. And so she just, she just doesn't want to, and, the fact that Tara is her roommate, she just doesn't want it to become a thing. So no sooner than she said that, then, Sam kind of fades into the wall because he can, walk through natural structures. And you see Tara appears. And this is when she, she's asking Musa about Dane. She's basically saying that she has a thing for Dane and trying to get a read on maybe how Dane possibly feels about her, being that Musa, she was there, during their previous interaction. And basically all Musa could tell her was that, I know that, he likes you. I don't know what that means. So she's not telling her that, he's really into you. She's basically saying that I know that he likes you. And so from that, Tara, is kind of getting her hopes up like, oh, it could be a thing. Now, at this point, we know that Dane has a thing for Rev. But Dane could easily be bisexual. But, at this point, I don't know. So Dane and Rev are off in another corridor. They're looking through some things. Rev doesn't have a shirt on because it, was covered in beer. So I guess he's looking for something else to put on. He found like this armor, like the piece that goes on your head, and Beatrice appears and was like, oh no, don't cover your, you should never cover your face. And Dane was like, I agree, I second that. Basically, it was like, oh, okay. And so they started doing what they call, I guess, shotguns. It's where the one person inhales the smoke and blows into the other person's mouth. So Beatrice and Dane did it first. It was his first time doing it, so they had to walk him through it. And then Beatrice and Rev, and then eventually she excused herself saying she had to go wash her hands. So now it's Rev and Dane, and Rev started asking him about his best friend Tara, and he was like, he was asking him about the brownies. And so Dane was like, well, she brought the brownies for everyone. He was like, no, she didn't. She brought them for you. And he was like, she wants you so bad. I can't believe that you haven't realized that. And you can kind of see Dane's face, like he's feeling some kind of way, like, oh Lord, like trying to think of maybe if he, did I lead her on or something. So based on his reaction in this scene, you can kind of see that he only likes Tara as a friend. So at this point, Sky is drunk and he approached Stella wanting to talk about Ricky. And of course she, at this point, she doesn't want to talk about it. And he's basically saying that I guess this conversation is long overdue because, me staying with you after you blinding your roommate either makes me an asshole or makes me look psychotic. And before she could really respond, he receives a text saying that the burned one was killed. So he's so excited, he walks off because he wants to find Silva to see if Silva is recovering. So Bloom is still in this room. These boxes, still going through these boxes of portraits, and she's actually using her cell phone to take pictures of, the portraits. Beatrice walks in and basically asks her what she was doing. Bloom points out a particular person in the photo, asking Beatrice if she knew her. Beatrice was like, asked her like, why did she want to know? And of course, Bloom, didn't want to say. And so Beatrice basically said no. She didn't know who that person was. You could clearly see she was lying. So Sky finds Silva, and you can clearly see that he is not improving. And of course, Sky is confused, and Silver's saying, well, I guess they didn't find the right one. So they killed one, but it wasn't the one that scratched him. And I think at this point, Silver has resigned himself, to his fate. Like, at this point, there's a strong possibility that I might not make it. And of course, Sky, he just doesn't want to hear that. He's always seen Silver as a fighter, and it's like he's being, he feels disheartened that he feels like Silver is giving up. But that's not really what he's doing. I mean, he's coming to terms with the fact that he could possibly die. I mean, there's not a whole lot he can do. Okay, so while that's going on, Bloom went to find Aisha, and she's showing Aisha the photo that has the woman standing next to Dowling in the photo. And so now she feels like, okay, Dowling's been lying to her. She's been holding out on her. She knows more than she thinks, and she wants to go and confront Dowling. Aisha is like, you know what? Let's go back to our room. I want to study. She has no interest in even getting involved in it at this point. Aisha is pressing the issue. Bloom is pressing the issue. Aisha was like, you want to confront Dowling at midnight drunk. She basically told her that, you know what? I'm tired of pulling you back from the cliff. If you want to jump, you go right ahead. And she walked away. She went on back to the room because I guess she figured it was Aisha. Like I said, she's going through some things. I do think that to a point, Bloom, it can be a bit much. But I also think that there's some underlying issues that Aisha is going through. But it wasn't like she was being unreasonable. Like, I know I'm not going to confront her. Are you serious? She's the headmistress, so I'm not going to barge into her office to confront her about anything right now. So we flash to Beatrice. She makes her way to Dowling's office. Cullum is there. They're still trying to get past this first, I guess, barrier. Eventually, Beatrice was, she really didn't. They're running out of time because when she walked into the office, she was like, we need to get down there tonight because Bloom is asking about Rosalind. This is the first time we heard the person's name. And of course, Cullum was like, why is she doing that? Doesn't matter. We need to get down there. And so Beatrice went on and shoved Cullum through, I guess, the first barrier. So I don't know if that, because it triggered it deactivated it. And so she was able to walk by. So you can kind of see whatever it did to Cullum, sucked the life out of him. I don't know. He looks pale. He looks blue, like he's turning blue, like he's struggling to breathe. Beatrice went on to step right on over him and proceeded on down the corridor. Okay, so at this point, Dowling and Ben has received the word that Silver is not improving. And so now she is ill at ease because there's clearly more than one. Bloom decides she's going to go on and confront Dowling. She shows her the photo, asking her who this person is and, about how she's been lying to her. And Dowling explains to her that Rosalind used to be headmistress. She was a teacher. She was actually Dowling's teacher during a very difficult time during their school's history. And Bloom basically said, I want to talk to her. I want to meet her. And Dowling was dead ass serious when she stepped in her face and basically said that Rosalind is dead. And basically this is going to be the end of that. So at this point, Bloom is upset. She storms out. She goes to the rocks and she had the stones. And she has this emotional kind of outburst. Like, her powers. There's fire everywhere. And then she's able to, control it. Thank God. And, get that under control. Sky appears. He's all suited up to fight. They talked for a minute. And then she starts hearing whatever this thing is calling her again. And so she realized that, okay, the monster is in the forest. And before she could even say anything, Sky took off. And of course, she took off behind him. So back at the party, Dane and Tara are playing beer pong against Rev. And it was like two other students. And Stella walked up and she asked about Sky. And Rev was like, oh, he's with Bloom. He's like, oh, it's my bad. Don't blind her, right? Such an ass. And Stella ends up saying, why would I waste my magic on a changeling? And so you can see Rose face like, Bloom's a changeling? And so next thing you know, she receives a text about the stones. So Sam and Musa, it seems like they're in the doorway of their room. They're kissing. Next thing you know, Musa's phone is going off, text after text, back to back to back. So, of course, she stopped to check it. She also received a text about the stone. Aisha walks out, and she was like, did you receive the same text? So she's like, what in the world is going on here, right? So Sky and Bloom go past the barrier into the woods. It's getting, it's getting louder and louder. They know that the burned one is near, but they can't quite see it yet. It eventually jumps out. Sky is trying to fight this thing off. Just as it was about to attack Bloom, all of Aisha, Musa, Stella, and Tara appear. They all use their powers. Sky is able to stab the monster. At this point, they think it's dead. Eventually, Musa can feel that it wasn't. And so they jump back. Next thing you know, this thing explodes. And then you see Dowling. So Dowling appeared, and she was able to kill the burned one. It was, thank God, it was the one that attacked Silva. So at this point, they're expecting him to make a recovery. So while this is going on, Beatrice makes it down the corridor, and she realizes that there is another barrier. So of course, at this point, she is pissed. She makes it back, and basically, you can see Cullum is still there. Looks like he's slowly suffocating to death. Beatrice is like, there's no way for me to heal you in time, and so she just ends up killing him, and he just disintegrates. So they're all back at the school, and of course they're all kind of congregated together. Dowling basically said that, basically regardless of your motives, it was stupid for you to go out there, and it's late, so we're going to deal with this in the morning. So just as they were walking upstairs, Sky and Stella decides that it's time for them to have the conversation, and basically Sky is kind of over it. She is basically saying that, you're the only one that really knows me. And he tells her that that's your fault. Like, you're standoffish. You're just an unpleasant person. He didn't say that, but she is. And she's talking about how he doesn't know the responsibilities that's on her shoulders. And he's saying that he understands where she's coming from. But, at this point, he's basically tired of her using that as an excuse. And she was saying to him that, I just need to know that you'll catch me, that you'll be there to catch me if I fall. And he says to her, well, who's going to catch me? Like, basically, our relationship has been one-sided. It's always been about you and your needs and your wants. And it doesn't seem like, she's ever really thought about him and what he wanted. Like I said, in the previous video, she's a manipulative bitch. So they're back in their room, and they're getting ready for bed. Tara sends Dane a text, and she ends up receiving this video that appears to have some kind of glamour or something on it, because what she saw in the video didn't actually happen. So it was a video of Dane and Rev in, that room where they were looking for, I guess, a shirt for Rev. And Rev ends up asking Dane, so what about your friend? And he was like, what are you talking about? This is... Dane saying, what are you talking about? And he was like, Brad was like, your weird fat friend that loves plants. And the video shows Dane saying, fuck flowers. And they're laughing and clowning. And then you see a Beatrice appearing. She appears like she's recording it. And it's like, oh my God, I feel so bad for Tara. Now, even though we know that that's not what actually happened, Tara doesn't know that. And it's like, oh man, that's so messed up. Because you already know that she's insecure. And so this is just obviously was to play further into her insecurities. Now, why she would be targeted, I don't really know. But that was hard. That was rough. So Aisha and Bloom are talking, and she was saying to Aisha, you would be proud of me, like, that she was able to she went to the stones and she was able to exercise some control. And she started talking about the burned one, and started talking about how Miss Dowling knows more. And Aisha was like, I just want, can you just stop? And she thought that it was because it was late and Aisha didn't want to talk. Aisha was basically like, I don't know if at this point she's under the impression that maybe this Roslyn person is her mother, her birth mother. But Aisha was like, for all you know, your mother was just a regular student. who got pregnant and was scared and made the decision to give you up. And you don't know how lucky you are to, most of us, are just regular fairies, and we work very hard and, for things that come naturally to you. So again, this has been still bothering her that she's not able to, I don't think that she's jealous of Bloom. I think that, it's frustrating that she feels like, she was born to this and Bloom is just coming into this. And it seems like Bloom's natural ability is, I don't know, is kind of making her insecure about her own abilities or something. And so, she basically was telling Bloom that she needs to be realistic. And, Bloom was like, I am being realistic, and the issue is me being realistic is basically me having to deal with the fact that my mother gave me up because she didn't want me. And so I'm doing everything I can to, I guess, trying to push those thoughts aside. Basically, she wants a reason. Her need to know why, where she comes from and why she was given up, is what's driving her. And I think at that point, Aisha understood where she was coming from. And so Dowling is now in her office. She's talking to Silva and Ben, and she's telling them about how Bloom confronted her about Rosalind, and how she told her that Rosalind died and how they can never meet. So at this point we don't know what the relationship is between Rosalind and Bloom. We do know that she wanted her to find her, but we don't know for reasons we know not. And Dowling did make it a point to say that Bloom could be one of the most powerful, fairies that they'd ever seen. So what exactly is her lineage? We don't know.